We are beyond thrilled to have on this episode of True Diligence Lidia Bastianich with us today. Lindsay Shively here with Jill Silva. Lidia, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure, Lindsay.
And welcome to Kansas City, somewhere you have been for a very long time, getting ready to celebrate 20 years at Lidia's Kansas City. That's phenomenal.
Absolutely. It's like a second home. You know, I come here regularly. I enjoy it. I'm part of the, shall we say, the city fabrics, you know, with the journalist, with the different association and fundraising. I love doing that as well. So I'm part of Kansas City, and I'm 20 years. I'm delighted what happened to the crossroad since 20 years ago.
It's pretty amazing. I was telling Lindsay that I went to your first press conference, also traveled around with you when you were looking for your space in Kansas City. You guys just posted on your Lydia's Instagram a photograph of what the Freight House looked like back in the day. Shocking. Tell us what you remember about that, because I remember a mud puddle.
There was a big mud puddle in the middle of the room where the restaurant is now. And that was, the whole thing was a freight house, a beer freight house at least. And it was all abandoned. And, you know, we went downtown to look for spaces, and we went to Johnson County to look for spaces. And then I saw this space, and I said, you know, Union Station was across, the trains were passing. And I said, you know, this could be a little piece of Italy in the middle of Kansas City. And I liked it. And here we are 20 years later.
And what do you think about what the neighborhood looks like now?
I love it. I love it. I love it also because I feel, you know I've been attributed, Lydia has been attributed as the kind of the kindling point for that area. And, you know, certainly on my part, it wasn't a long-term plan. You know, I just loved it. But there's something to be said about sensibilities, you know. When I sense something inside in the heart, I kind of, if I feel good about it, then I pursue it. And then to see all that has evolved. I mean, when we were first there were a few scattered art studios here and there, you know, a lot of warehouses, and but nonetheless, I figured we had parking, we still have,
yes,
and people will travel for good food, and I said, you know, we'll bring them here slowly, and so we did.
It's funny you mentioned parking. That's what I said to Jill before the show, because it is smack dab in the middle of such an interesting, cool part of town, but very accessible because you can pull right in and feel like you're a part of it all.
Well, that's necessary, you know, especially in the city.
Yeah.
And I think Kansas City is a big car city. People travel with their car, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, yeah, they need to have somewhere to park their car, but otherwise, you know, we'll create the ambience, the food for them.
It's worked really well. I'm wondering if you can back up, though, even further and tell us why Kansas City. We got kind of lucky. There's the Lydias in Kansas City, and there's one in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh, right.
So I think we won the lottery there. How did we do that?
Well, because but let me go back. So, you know, I opened my first restaurant in 1971 in Queens, which is a suburb, and then it turned out into 2 restaurants. We were successful. We sold those. We opened for Lydia on 58th Street in Manhattan in 1981. And, you know, the kids were growing, the family was growing, and my kids, I always told them not to do this. I told them, you got to get educated, you got to get a real American job. So Joe went to, you know, business school, went down to Wall Street, spent there a few years. I mean, it was a good beginning for him, and ultimately came back. You know, one day he said, you know, I quit. And I said, what? You know, and he said, Mom, you quit a good job on Wall Street? And I said, why? He says, you know, I wasn't happy. And when your child tells you, I wasn't happy, I said, okay, what would you like to do? And this was at Lydia at the bar. He says, well, I think I'll hang around here a little bit. I didn't like that. You know, just hanging around a restaurant at the bar, you know, all things could happen. But he really wanted to get into the industry. And so when he came in, the first thing we did, actually, I told him, if you want to do this, even though we traveled back and forth to Italy, I told him, You got to go to Italy for a year, up and down, work with wine producers. He always loved wine. Wine producers, worked in restaurants with friends, friends of mine. And then in a year you'll have a good sense. And he did, and he came back. And when he came back, he worked at Lidia for a little while with us, myself and my husband, and him. And it's a tight space, working with they always are. Then he wanted to open his own place. I said, okay, go look for a deal and we'll move on. He did find a deal. We opened Becco. Becco on 46th Street, which is still doing well. But after that, he sort of, he did well in that restaurant, it was going on. And he came and says, Ma, there's a whole America out there. We are focusing here on Manhattan, but there's a whole America that's underserviced in what we have to give. And I mean, we could do, mid-America would really open their arms to us. And I said, okay, go and look for a space. So he did. He went to Columbus, Ohio, and Kansas City. And it just so happened, who brought him to Kansas City was Dave Wagner, our initial partner. And he was in the city. He wanted to come back to Kansas City. And so him and Joe came here. And, the comfort of having somebody work with you that is from the city. And they called me in, and I came. And, to have a successful restaurant, a city needs a certain kind of a population. It needs to be also vital in the sense of culturally vibrant, business-wise. There's a lot of good businesses that have been initiated here in Kansas City. So it has that good kind of base, a need for restaurants. These are restaurants' clients. And so we did, we looked around. The kind of food that we were serving was not being served here in Kansas City. The Italian-American food, great food, was part of it. And even in our restaurant, we have some Italian-American dishes, but we also did a lot of regional cooking. Sort of brought the whole cuisine closer to Italy. And we opened, it was a lot of work because the warehouse itself needed a lot. But we all kind of worked together, and we were very excited. 20 years ago, today we cut the ribbon.
That's so exciting. Talk a little bit about, you were the first Italian chef that I grew up as an Italian-American child and ate Italian-American food every once in a while. Your food was so different. It had so many different elements, and that I had not seen before. Explain a little bit about the ingredients. We kind of ran around town looking for some of those ingredients because you needed to know if Kansas City could supply you with the ingredients for your dishes.
Well, yeah, our cuisine, well, let's talk about the Italian cuisine. Italy has 20 regions. And when you travel to Italy, there's really 20 different regional cuisines. Every region is very unique. Basically the same pasta fagioli or spaghetti alla bolognese, but everything is a little different in every region. And what you mentioned, the Italian-American cuisine was completely different. The Italian-American cuisine was the cuisine of the immigrants, of the early adaptation of these Italian immigrants. And the first immigrants that came here was at the end of the 1800s, were from 3 regions, basically. It was from Calabria, from Sicily, and from Campania, which is around Naples. So the Italian-American cuisine is basically rooted in those 3 regions. Lots of tomatoes and peppers and spiciness. So when those immigrants came, they wanted to cook what they remember, they knew, but they didn't find all the ingredients, the proper ingredients. And the adaptation of their cuisine, of what they remembered, with the ingredients that they found, ultimately the Italian-American cuisine evolved. It's a great cuisine. It's a cuisine of the immigrants. It's a good cuisine, but it is an American story, if you will. And so where we were different is that we brought some of the regional cuisine into it, which made it different. And to do that, you need the traditional ingredients. And with Cody Hogan, who is now the chef, we went, you remember, to the market in the morning, looking for the greens. We even brought seeds to the farmers because we needed the arugula. There was no arugula available at that time.
Wow.
And so on. So we really got involved in getting the right products. But now, you can have just about everything here, which is great.
There's one ingredient, though, that you have done an awful lot for, and I think people don't realize, pork from this region. When you and I went out to Paradise about 2 years ago, and I'm not sure that you even knew exactly how much you would help this region bring those heritage pigs back to the table.
Well, absolutely, because I grew up in a setting where with Grandma, it was. Let me just maybe historically place myself. So I was born in Istria, and if you go all the way up by Venice, even further north, Friuli, Venezia Giulia is the region. Istria is now part of Croatia, but it was Italy. And when the war finished, Italy lost. That part was all given to communist Yugoslavia. So we were caught behind communism for about the first 10 years of my life. And food was scarce. But, the Italians, they all had their gardens. Grandma had her goats, her ducks, her pigs. We had 2 pigs every year. And her chickens. And the fresh vegetables, seasonal vegetables. So we made our own olive oil, our own wine. So I was very much, used to having those seasonal, local, great ingredients. In a cuisine, as much as we taught highlight the chefs today, it's about the product.
It's the farmers.
If I don't have the product, I can know all the techniques I want. It's not going to come out. So for me, it was always essential to find out that product, because it was almost a selfish reason. I know that it would come out good if I had those good products, but it was the way to eat, the way I was raised. And so yes, we went around, and we went to visit here the turkeys. What's his name?
Frank Rees,
yes,
out in Lindsborg,
yes,
Kansas.
with him.
Good Shepherd Farms.
Exactly, he still does. So I was interested in all of this, the free range, these animals that were able, the chickens that were able to eat the grasshoppers and all of that, because it really gives a different taste and that's the way nature should be. That's the way we should eat. And here in Kansas, when we came, if you will, the outside, the greens, the fields were much more accessible than they were in New York. So I had an opportunity to touch the farmers, and I loved it. And that's how it all began. And then once we got it from here, I got them to bring the meat to New York, to my restaurants in New York, and so on. And now, they're distributed all over. Not only them, but and so it's very important. And I must say now that most of the chefs are really conscious of and appreciate farmers and animal husbandry done properly and all of that. The meats, it's all about living well, eating well, and also being in touch with our environment.
And you grew up with your Nonna, and you were very in touch with the environment. Tell us a little bit about growing up as a young child on a farm.
Well, yes, I think, I just come out, and I think, with my memoirs, people exactly questions like this. Yes, Lidia, you're a chef. We love your recipes. Where did you get all of this? Where did it all come from? And I did grow up on this farm because communism was oppressive. So my mother put my brother and myself with Grandma, and we lived in this little town. And so you had to do everything that needed to be done to feed the animals in the morning, milk the goats. That was our breakfast, goat's milk, And I remember, with the foam. Never mind cappuccino today. I had cappuccino straight.
The natural version.
Absolutely, straight from the goat. And then, every November there was the slaughter of the pigs, and 2 of them, and they provided food for the rest of the year because, the meat was cured, whether it was bacon, whether it was sausages, whether it was salami, whether it was the prosciutto. Every piece of the animal we cured and we preserved. Grandma did. I mean, I was a little helper running around, but that remained so ingrained in me, that appreciation. And after, in 1956, 10 years after, my parents decided that it was time to move on, that they couldn't raise us there. We escaped back into Italy, lived in Trieste, where we had family also, for 2 years in a political refugee camp. So, you know, the trek for food and with food for me was diversified, you know, as I grew up. But when we left Istria, I was not aware that we were not going to come back. And once we were in Italy, I realized, and you know, I missed because I didn't say goodbye to Grandma, to my animals, to whatever. So I think that food remained my connector. You know, every time I would go back and I would cook things that smell like Grandma did. It brought Grandma back to me, and so food remained in my heart and my soul, and it is my way of communicating until this day.
Those involuntary memories are so powerful.
Yeah.
How long were you in the refugee camp?
We were there for 2 years.
What was it like trying to find food then? Was it dramatically different, I'm sure?
Well, in the refugee camp, you had your own little bowl, and we would go in line, you know, wait for them to ration food to you. And I remember it was vividly, it was always a spaghetti or tomato sauce, and then a little piece of cheese, maybe an apple. And so, you know, food was rationed, literally. We were fortunate because we had some relatives in the city, but we had to live in the camp because we were refugees, and my parents decided that maybe we should migrate on because Italy was difficult. But we did have some of the relatives that would supplement with food. So, you know, from my 10 to 12 years, you know, there was the need for food, in a sense, you know, the want, the desire for food, and so on. And then, you know, ultimately in 58, we got a visa to come to the United States. Dwight Eisenhower was the president, I always recall, and here we had nobody either, so we were brought here by the Catholic Relief Services. And you know, that's why I feel such need to give back, because people really helped my family. So we got to New York, and they put us in a hotel until they found a job for my father and a little home for us. And that was about 6 weeks into our arrival. And we began our life being helped by the Catholic Relief Services, Red Cross, and the neighborhood. And where we ended up was in New Jersey. It was a very Italian neighborhood. And so the Italian community really rallied up, and they brought us food, they brought us chairs, they brought us napkins, everything, you know, to kind of fill our house. And ultimately, you know, from there on, you know, as a child, you know, the opportunity of school, or finally having a home, or finally feeling safe someplace, and you know, the opportunities. Like I always say, you know, would I have done this had I not been the immigrant and gone through all that I went? Maybe yes, maybe no, but there's a drive in me, you know, that I guess it still is there. You have an opportunity. You've got to, you know, you're given this opportunity. You've got to take care. You've got to make the best out of it. You've got to work at it. And you've got to, and I think that's what drives me till this day.
You had two pivotal stories when you were in Italy that I remember from reading your autobiography just recently. The one is that you were starting to catalog food in your memory. You did not have, you had rations, but you were starting to catalog, you told me, what your grandmother had served you. And from there, you also worked for the nuns. And I think, is that kind of the first hands-on in a kitchen that you might have
It is,
really
you
had?
know, besides helping Grandma, you know, making the breads and whatever, she would get me involved. That was working with the nuns. While we were in the camp, there was actually a very altruistic woman, and my mother was an elementary school teacher, and this woman had 3 children, and one of them was autistic, and so she came to the camp and asked if there is an instructor or something that she could use as for the home to take care of her child. And so my mother was a teacher. She took her on, and my mother kind of worked part-time, and this woman in turn paid for my schooling with the nuns. And so I would get out of the camp, her and I, my mother and I would get out of the camp. She would go to the home of this Signora Leonori, and I would go to the school. And in the school, again, to sort of help to supplement, I guess, they would put me in the morning when I would come in early, and in the afternoon after I would wait for my mother, or even at lunchtime in the kitchen. And I would peel apples, whatever, but it was the first commercial kitchen. Big pots, big pans, the nuns cooking in their habits, actually. For me, it was very, it was kind of the first experience in a commercial kitchen, if you will. And I kind of liked it. But going back to that library of flavors, I would, why do I have such a strong recall? I think, food and aromas and all of that give you a strong recall anyway. But I was trying to always retrieve the memories with grandmother and the flavor. And so, I would kind of file away in my library all of these flavors, and I would really look for them because they reminded me, they brought me back to grandma into that courtyard. And till this day, as part of my flavor reference library, I must say when I cook, I kind of try to recall and try to recreate those flavors. Not always do they come out the same, but yes, they are I have since increased my library, keep increasing it every day if I can, but yeah, that was the beginning.
Is there one flavor that still instantly takes you back there? Is there one that's the strongest?
Oh, there is, especially the herbs, the rosemary, the bay leaves, because grandma would always kind of send me out to go and get the herbs that she needed. But we had, and so when you cut bay leaves like that fresh, your hand smells, but it's not for the whole day of that bay leaf. We used to have this rosemary kind of hedges, and as kids we used to play hide and seek, and we would insert ourselves in this rosemary hedges. And again, you would smell for a few days because,
It's a strong one, yeah.
Yeah. And so those are the flavors that, kind of fresh herbs flavors.
Oh my goodness. Were you allowed to leave freely from the camp, or was the fact that your mom had a job like the reason you guys could leave?
Yeah, no, we were not allowed to leave, just go out. You need to get a permission where you're going and why you're going. So yeah, so we were under, it had a regular, like a guard with a door for people to come and go. I mean, other kids went to schools, I guess, and people in and out, but you had to be registered to go in and out.
It really was an incredible opportunity with the nuns in the kitchen and everything.
Yeah, that was kind of my and then sort of, food always kind of made me feel good. The preparation of food, the nurturing, that's what I loved, and I guess brought me to where I am today.
Have you ever thought about what would your life have been if you had actually ended up in another country besides coming to the United States? And how that would have been a very different situation for you?
I travel a lot. I love traveling because, and I do think, even if I would have remained in Italy, how would have, life, and I would have been a natural there, certainly an Italian. And I think that in retrospect, when I think about it, I don't think that I would have ever achieved or had the opportunities that I had, or had and still have in the United States, any place in the world.
So this truly is your American dream.
It certainly is. That's the name of my book, and it is my American dream.
It's a wonderful book.
Tell
us a little bit more when you got here and you started to realize that cooking would actually be your profession, because in the times that you were growing up, sometimes women were just having families and not having careers, and you went full force and have become a major force.
Yeah, I didn't realize that I didn't realize that was going to be my career, I thought, going to school, the academics, my mother was a teacher, I loved the sciences, and I thought that I was going to go in that direction. But, I came here, needed to help the family. First, when my mother was working, I cooked a lot for the family. In young, 12, 13, she would leave me like all the set, the beans are soaking, this and that, put this to cook for half an hour, add that to it, and I would make dinner. And then, I began working part-time. At 14, I started in the bakery, which was across the street. It was actually Walker's Bakery, Christopher Walken, and his family.
Christopher Walken.
Exactly, we're still friends. And he would come on the weekends too. He had three brothers. There were three brothers. They would all come and help. I would work on a weekend, but I realized that food was I loved. Yes, kind of selling it, but also I would go in the back when somebody needed a birthday cake or something and decorate it. Learn from the pastry chefs. I loved that. And then when I went to college in the city, restaurants, working in restaurants, kind of, like everybody else does. And I always ended up in the back. The chef was gone or something, making a pasta or something. So I realized that, I did that with ease and I loved it. But what really turned it around, I think, is, I met my husband, who was also an immigrant. He was in the restaurant business. He was actually a maitre d' in Romeo Salta, which was a prestigious Italian restaurant in Manhattan. And that's when I kind of began to get ever more, he would take me to these good restaurants, and I got to know, I said, this is, I really would love to know how to do that, I would love to know how to do that. And then, we had our child, Joseph, first, and he wanted to open the restaurant, my husband. And in 1971, this small restaurant, and I told him, I'll help you. But I wasn't certainly a chef at that time. But I had this passion I loved. At that time, we hired an Italian-American chef because that's what was popular, the cuisine that was popular. And I decided that I wanted to learn more, so I became his sous chef, and for 10 years I worked with him in the kitchen, in our kitchen. And there I really honed my skills as a chef, and I began to insert these recipes that were regional, that we cooked at home. And what I noticed was that people would be curious about them. We would make like polenta, and I would bring out to the tables to like polenta with venison, what's it, that's in the 70s, that was that. But I would bring to tables to taste without charging, let them order what they want. And so I began to get this feedback. This is great stuff, and feedback also on my own capabilities. And in 1981, we sold, by then we had 2 restaurants, and we opened for Lidia, and there I became the chef. And I began cooking regional Italian food.
But Lidia almost did not open.
Oh, because
This is it's scary to think that it almost didn't open.
Well, we invested everything we had gotten out of selling those 2, plus my mother's money, everything, because, we were not used to going over budget. We had made a budget. We thought that we would fit into it, but the home needed underpinning. There's all things that we did not plan on. And these are big expenses. And so financially, we almost didn't open it. And even when we did open it, decide to open it, we left the unfinished parts, kind of the cellar, the background, a lot of unfinished parts so we can finish the dining room. I can have my range, my stoves, and I can cook. And we opened, and it was a good opening. People right away came to visit, some of the old customers, new ones, the press.
And some really famous people. We need to talk about some of the really famous people that sat at your table. I think one of them was Julia Child, and the other was James Beard.
They came together. And they're both 2 towering figures. They were big when they entered through the door. I look over, but they did, and they were curious about what was this Italian woman chef cooking this different Italian food. And specifically, Julia Child, she wanted to know the risotto. She wanted me to teach her how to make the risotto. And it was a mushroom risotto, I remember. And so they came back a few times, and we became friends. She came over the house. I gave her a lesson in risotto. She knew how to make risotto from then on. She invited me on her show, which was the Master Chef series, and ultimately that's where I kind of got the offer from the producer, Lydia, you're pretty good, how about your own show? and so it went.
And 30 years later, PBS has been your home for all those years.
It has.
Were you nervous about going on TV at the first time?
I was in a sense, but I had been invited here, the specialty shows and this, and I kind of focused a lot on what I did. I think not so much on the performance. It's not, I'm not an actress or actor. I do what I do, but I am a communicator. I love to communicate. I love to teach. I love to share. And I must say that Julia really encouraged me a lot, and when we decided that I was going to do that, the two things was I wanted to be on PBS, and the second was that we film in my home. Now, my home was precisely because I was comfortable in my home. In a studio, I didn't know how to handle a studio, so they agreed. And they came into my house. My house was wrecked because they did all kinds of wires and equipment. But I cooked comfortably. I was on my stove. I knew where my knife was. I knew where, I had to handle everything. And so it began like that, very much in comfort in my home, sharing what I love to do and the history of it.
Was that common to do that in a home at the time?
No,
Okay.
it was not. It was not. Although Julia did some of. And everything that I kind of initially is in Julia's kind of mimicking, but she encouraged me. She did a lot of shows out of her kitchen too.
It's lovely that she just wanted to lift up another woman instead of seeing it as any kind of competition.
Oh, absolutely. She was so giving, and even the style that she thought, because a lot of times chefs go out there on television and they produce this elaborate thing, and yes, beautiful to look, but for the viewer, what benefit do they get? She was always concerned that the viewer would be able to cook, to do what she does. And I said, that's the way it should be, If you're showing something that you love to do, you want other people to do it, you want to be an instructor for them. And she was the one that really set the example as far as me and my show.
And since then, cooking shows have exploded and so many people come and gone. And you are very much ever present. Is it your authenticity? Is it the keeping the recipes simple? What do you think it is?
I think it's all of those things. I think that, I look at it, if a person, a viewer, gives me half an hour of their time watching me, I better leave them with something. I better give them something to take away, to make it their worthwhile, and to feel that connection. And I think that's what connects us, me and my viewers, is the fact that they know that they'll get something from Lydia, and then that they can bring Lydia's flavor into their kitchen. Lydia's flavors mean Italian flavors, because, I haven't invented anything. It's all about Italy. And so I think that it's very important, kind of respecting and connecting with the viewer, and always bringing them something that's interesting, something that's new, and simplified, understand, I'm always concerned because I want them to do it at home. And, a simple way of doing it, you can cook very simple and still be very delicious. That's what Italian cuisine is all about. It's the products, get the best products, and then simple. And, maybe some chefs feel insecure in giving the simplicity away because they say, oh, he doesn't know how to cook yet, or she. It's not about, this is what the culture is, and if I can simplify it and still bring the flavor and the deliciousness to the viewer, then I made my point.
And last time you were here cooking with us, the complex of the flavors is amazing, but you're not afraid to show. I didn't know that you didn't rinse pasta. I feel like I can kind of decently cook, but when you didn't do that and use the pasta water, I was like, of course, just something simple like that.
Exactly, those little simple things. And people sometimes, if that's not their culture, their native culture, or if that's not their profession, I kind of feel a little bit out of place. But once show it to them. Yeah, that's logical.
So easy.
Yeah,
So obvious.
Yeah, I kind of validify the whole thing, don't I?
Right. Absolutely.
Are there any up and coming food TV chefs or whatever station, people who are doing food that you are excited about, who are of the next generation?
I think that there's a lot of, there was the whole thing of fanfare and sensationalism of food and whatever. And did that all have value? Does it still have value? I always say, it's not the way I teach or would, but what it has done, it has brought attention to food outside. So people, even if they were looking at it just in a fun way, then maybe they got caught and said, oh, maybe let me go a little deeper, let me find out. And I think that, now with Netflix and Google and all of that, there's a lot of good shows, cooking shows coming, and it's about maybe individual philosophies of cooking, individual cultures, individuals' passions. And I think there's a lot of good shows that are coming out there focusing and teaching the viewer, whether it is, how the food is grown, where does it come from, how certain cultures use it. It's beautiful to see also the passion of certain young chefs. How did they get into this business, And that's very important for young people out there that, are kind of thinking about getting in this industry, or for that matter, in any other industry. If you have a passion and if you love something, pursue it. Give it, but it's all about a lot of hard work and dedication and all of that. So I think that there's a lot of good shows coming up. There's travel involved with food, so that places food around the universe. You get to connect more the culture with the actually country, topography, climate, and the people, and so there's a lot going on with food that I love. I think the actually connecting the world through food and understanding, because people, when they go travel today, it's not, what are the sites only I'm going to see? What are the restaurants I'm going to eat in?
Oh, right.
Absolutely.
There you go.
It is part of vacation now.
Exactly. So you get to know into that culture, into that, the markets are important. So I think there's a lot of good shows, valid shows that are coming out that are teaching different aspects of food to the viewer.
Is there the next Lydia, though? Have you spotted anyone? Because obviously Julia spotted you, and I'm curious if you're seeing anyone out there that you're particularly a champion of, or think they're really doing a great job.
I think so. I think there are. I certainly of my time. I'm looking. I'm very critical, I must say. Because in a sense, you want whoever that might be to really be true to themselves, and you want them to be, and at the same time you want them to be instructive. So I think that there are out there. I'm looking. There's this young, I think, Israeli woman that's coming up that I'm checking out. I think she has, the guts of a simple, straightforward cuisine.
It's so interesting you talk about travel and how food is such a part of that now. What's your advice to someone? Because I find, it's difficult to find that on your own, the authentic experience when you're going somewhere. What do you do when you're traveling, if it's someplace you've never been?
Yeah, it is. You go to, any connections that you have within that country is always good. The press is always kind of snooping around, so if you know anybody in the press there, you could. But the markets, if you go to the markets, the food markets, just where the natives go. Ask what is the Saturday morning market in I don't know, in India or anywhere you want to go, and you go there and you just observe, just what are the natives buying, what are they eating, and then if somebody can, I usually talk to the vendors or talk to the a product. How do you use this product? What do you do with it? In Italy, mind you, even still in Italy, I recall not too long ago, and there was a mound of fennel, and there was this small farmer. His nails were full of of the earth still, really, really. But he looked so happy with his little hat. And I said, how do you cook your fennel? And he says, cook the fennel? And he told me in Italian, il finocchio cotto non vale un fico secco. So cooked fennel is not worth a dried fig. Evidently, he never cooked his fennel. He loved it crunching and raw and whatever. And this is a guy that, and so it made me think, yes, if you take a nice crispy fennel and you munch on it and you get all that licorice, that sweetness, when you cook it, it's a different, you lose a lot. Yeah. So talking to the people that actually grow it or they're more about their product will take you someplace.
Is it fun just continuing to develop even how you cook with ingredients like that?
Oh, continuous. That's what's beautiful about food, is a continuous evolution. Food, evolves, one would say, fast if you look at the all the different cuisines, the phone, the camera. But the real food evolution is a slow evolution, but it does evolve. So now what we're seeing, I think, here is the evolution, basically, health-wise, what I saw from my grandmother to now is the use of fats. That was the big one. She used a lot of the pork fats and all of that, which is, now it's basically oil and all of that. But what I see in America, and I love, is this reverting back to the seasonality, to the local products, to the appreciating really the farmers, the cheesemakers. They're sprouting all over the United States, which is wonderful.
You have another family member that's very involved with what you do, and we haven't talked about her yet. Your daughter, Tanya. Tell us how she is part of what you do, and also I saw that your granddaughter is going to be on a show coming up. So are we keeping it all in the family?
Well, let's start with the last one first. My grandkids and my family, the house, the show was taped in the house. Whoever passed by and would pull in. And so they were small. They were part of it, my mother. And now they're big. And then there was a period, when they kind of want no part of it. Now they're away in college and in high school. And now they want to be on the show. They love it because I guess maybe they feel who they are. But also, their friends see them, and they are interested in food because food has been their life. So, I do all the tapes, all the showings that I do. On this latest, just came out in October, taping that we did, 4 of my 5 grandchildren are on. They were able to make the taping, and grandma's on and whatever. And yes, my daughter Tanya. Now, my son, I tell you the story that my daughter Tanya also, education, you don't want to do this and whatever. And she did. She went on Georgetown Masters, ultimately a PhD from Oxford.
Wow.
In Renaissance art history. So she's really into her education. And yet, when she decided she was teaching in Italy while doing her dissertation, got married to Corrado, love him, he's a Roman, and when they were ready to have family, they wanted to move back close to home. And so they got a home right close to where we live. And, she became pregnant, and as she kind of was taking care of her motherly expectations, like you are, she would help me. She says, I need help. I need help with my books. I need help with my television. And that's what she does. She is a co-author in the cookbooks with me. She researches. She does a lot of the photography. She does the testing of the recipe and a lot of the kind of written research, historical, the production of the shows, the same thing, the research and all that. And she's actually taken over Kansas City. She is regularly here, loves it, comes back and collaborates with everybody, and kind of has brought in a new air of freshness of the Bastianich family, if you will. And she loves it too. Her kids are getting bigger and are off to college, one of them. One is in high school, and so she has more time. And, this is what she's been doing for the last 15 years with me, so she's just continuing. And I was so delighted, because it's because of both of my children that I'm able to grow and to do what I do. I couldn't have done all of this myself. And then, of course, it's the whole team, and a tremendous team of people in each place that kind of believe in what we do, and it's a good collaboration.
And you have a change at the restaurant that we wanted to talk about, which is Cody Hogan has been promoted. I think he's always been doing fabulous work, but he's taken the reins, hasn't he?
Cody Hogan is a great individual, very talented, and he's with us 20 years. And although he has a master's in music, in piano, he loves cooking. And he began with the pastry department.
I remember that.
Yeah, and the sous chef de cuisine, and ultimately now he's the chef. And I think he earned it, he deserves it, and he is so happy. He's excited to bring, his own kind of flavors to, or touch to the, moving on with Lydia's and the things that we're going to do there.
And how does that work? It's your vision, it's your food, it's your name.
Right.
But then you also have to give someone autonomy to
There's
keep them, right?
There's too many yours in your question.
Okay.
It's ours. It is. It's, you do set a platform. You do set a philosophy, that philosophy, which is the same as him and I have been parallel in the philosophy. That's why we sort of started together. That's why he is with me 20 years. He is the one that identified the farmers, and that we went to farmers and continues to communicate with the farmers and get the products. So I think, that's on the same level. He has traveled with me to Italy many times, comes to New York, and so he knows, what is kind of a shall we say, a Bastianich profile, a family profile of food. To that, he has to have the freedom to add something that he sees on his own, because, this is a bright mind. You wanna use that mind, and I wanna collaborate and work together. It makes everything better and stronger.
20 years for any restaurant is an amazing feat. How do you keep it fresh? Is that a conscious decision at certain time intervals, or are you just constantly looking at the menu? What do you do?
It's all of those. You need to update everything.
Yeah.
You need to update the looks of the restaurant. We just redid all of the bar. And now there's dining at the bar, around, especially the big cities, whatever. Dining at the bar is in, so we did all of that. We enlarged on the patio. We made an extra room for catering and parties, an extension of the dining room. So we have that extra space, a new space. We continuously have new ideas for events, whether it's different wine tastings, whether it's seasonal product like the tomato dinner, whether we'll have a producer of the pork, like the Prime family, come in and talk about the pork and make a whole dinner of pork. And it also is about, changing the menu regularly. Seasonally, certainly. Reflecting, again, all of those farmers and all of that, making dinners around those farmers is very important. And making, so what else is new? What's happening in the food world? What's happening in Italy? You got to bring that innovation, because people like to expect certain things at certain time of the year. And if they see it, if they go to LA and they see it, they want it in Kansas City. And we are there to do just that, to make sure that we are kind of ahead of the curve, almost push the curve, if you will.
You talked a little bit earlier about charities and the work that you do, and I know you have a specific charity that you do a lot of work with, Your Boys Grow, and you also have a goat named in your honor, correct?
I do. There's a Lydia hopping around the Boys Grow farm. It's you've been there.
I have, and had dinner out there, and worked with the boys actually just this year out at Powell Gardens. They came to sell at an event and had a great time with introducing them to a little bit of a different setup of botanical gardens. Had a great time, and hope to be working with them again. Why Boys Grow, though?
Well,
there's so many great groups.
Sometimes in life, just opportunities again come. And, I think when Boys Grow first started, John who is the founder, came to Lydia, was brought to Lydia and says, Lydia, you should talk to John. And I said, sure. And John was telling me about this concept that he had of bringing inner city kids, especially in the summer, bringing them out to the farm, teaching them the growing of food, of products, teaching them how to till the land, teaching them how to harvest, teaching them responsibility, how to out of that products that the product that they've harvested, develop a product, tomato, make into salsa, how to label it, how to sell it. So it's a whole cycle of an opportunity of teaching this inner city kids. In most cases, just a single family homes, difficulties in the summer, and he makes a budget where he even pays them a little something. But these kids just love it. They're out on the farm. They're appreciating because they're going to grow up, hopefully, to be responsible individuals, to appreciate their environment. And that's what we need in today's world, people that understand, that coexist with the environment, learning how to be kind of productive, work hard, responsible, on time, then inventive, if you will, design a label, can you imagine, make the sauce. Actually, as we are speaking, I think they're just building a school and a kitchen there.
That is what I heard, and the boys were very excited about it. But I also have to say they're amazing salesmen. They are really learning how to speak to their customer and engage them and really talk about. I was very impressed. It's very hard sometimes to get teens to look you in the eye, let alone
right.
sell their product. They were working hard to get me to buy one of every one of their products.
Were they? So they achieved their yeah.
I think I took 4 of the 5. Yes, because I said I knew that one of them. I said I have that at home, so I'll take the other 4. And the young man said, "Great, got it."
No, they are.
Will that be by cash or card?
There you go. Get that money in. But we do at least once a year an event for them, and I think this year we always, as Lydia's, would supply the food. We had it at Lydia's the first 2 years, then we had it out on the farm. And this year, for the first year, they had other restaurants involved, which is great. They're extending it into the community, and the community is really beginning to support them. But what was great at this event, you see these kids get up there and present a speech and whatever, and that's also a lesson in life. How do you approach, how do you communicate?
And on top of that, what they make is really good.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
I'm really enjoying them on the jalapeno mustard right now.
Oh, okay. Good. Test them out.
Yeah. So when you're in Kansas City, you're very busy. We know you come in fairly frequently. But I learned something about you that I didn't know, and that you sometimes slip over to the Kaufman to see some opera.
I do. I love classical music. Actually, when the Kaufman Center was in its beginning, we even had fundraisings for the orchestra. Actually, the whole again, I that nurtures me. Art, if you will, music nurtures me, and it's important to have it as part of a community. And on the other side, these are also the customers that, so it just benefits everybody. So yes, I think you have the acoustics there are phenomenal. So it's a great addition to Kansas City. It's been now a few years, but it's great. Yes, we get involved.
What is your favorite opera? I'm curious. Do you have a favorite?
I have, every time I go see a good one, I say, okay, it's a good prima donna or whatever. I say, oh, that's my favorite. I love Verdi. And a personal connection for me is Nabucco. Nabucco is an opera, maybe not known as much, but it is an opera of the exile of the Jews from Egypt. And, they have a chorus. It's one of the most beautiful choruses in operatic music. It's a chorus usually of 200 voices. And it's actually when they're singing, the aria is Va Pensiero, go thoughts. And the God thoughts, Va Pensiero, sull'ali dorate, on golden wings, and it's a thought of the land that they leave behind. And as immigrants, the Istrians adopted this as their hymn. And whenever, even here in America, when the Istrian community would go get together, the song Va Pensiero, this kind of chorus rendition of it would always come out. So I am very attached to that opera, but I love the aria and the chorus. When it makes me shiver.
Do you ever have time when you're here to eat anywhere else? Do you have a spot that you love?
Well, this morning I went for breakfast at Succotash.
Oh.
Do you like that place?
Oh,
Yes.
yes. Great pancakes.
Yeah, I had an addition of a pancake, which was like a moon, the size of a harvest moon. It was so big, So yes, we did, and was it? I think it's what's her name? The owner,
Beth.
Beth,
Barton.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, she was so adorable. She came over, and so it was nice. It was nice to see. Also, there was a lot of young students there, I guess, from the schools there.
Oh yeah.
So it was nice. I try to get to as much as, but on the peak hours, lunch and dinner, I stay at Lydia's.
Sure.
And tonight you have a very special dinner. What will be on that dinner celebrating your 20th anniversary?
Well, celebrating our 20th anniversary on this gala dinner will be the all-time favorites, plus the new ones. So the frico is got to be there. The stuffed cabbage is got to be there. The chicken with lemon and olives is got to be there. The ossobuco, the pork ossobuco is got to be there. Then, of course, we have the pasta trio. And gnocchi with duck guazzetto is got to be on it. So there's going to be the traditional plus some of the new additions.
One of my favorites is the pulpy.
Polpo, that's going to be there.
It's going to be there?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Octopus and potato and frisee salad.
Exactly,
Ooh.
exactly.
Yeah, it's so unusual. It's, you just don't find that in every restaurant. So.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Good
That's an
flavors.
old recipe. My grandmother used to make. She didn't elaborate as much, but it was octopus, potatoes, and onions, and oil and vinegar dressing. And, that goes back to that memory recall, if you will.
Absolutely.
Does that make it so much more special when you're cooking with your own grandkids?
It's cooking with them. It's for that matter, whether it's grandma or mother or father, is the connection, because food is a connector, and you're teaching them. With food you can teach so many things. You can, I certainly share them my stories, the philosophy of not wasting anything, how food wasn't so available for us, how we respected, how we ate seasonal. So it's in a sort of setting very simple that you can tell them many things, and express this kind of affection and nurturing desire. But also, I think food gives roots, gives stability. It identifies you with who you are. We all have, I guess, at our holiday dinners, there's one or two foods that come that are very family traditional. And, they might not be as next door, even though it's Thanksgiving, yours might be different. But what it does, it kind of transcends generations, and you carry it on from one generation to the other within your family. But what it does, it gives you that strength and that root, that you belong, that this is the flavor that ties you with your ancestors, with your cousins, even though you might not be talking to them or whatever. But it's a connector.
It's your family history. You're so
Exactly.
right about that,
Exactly.
especially on the holiday. When you look back, what's your pinch me moment?
Pinch me moment.
What's your big wow moment?
Oh my God, my big wow moment. I think there's many. Certainly, again, the grandchildren having to do something with whether it is that meal, whether it is their achievement, whether it is seeing them graduating as person. I mean, that's the wow moment for me. As far as the personal, professional, is that wow moment is when the dish comes the way that I imagine it, comes even better. And then when I feed somebody, I can see that in their face. And so it's this connection that kind of validifies me, sort of, say, yeah. And I transported that to whomever I'm giving that to. So it's for me, it's communicating from way deep with somebody, and because ingesting something, eating something, and being able to feed somebody, it's extremely personal. It's not, it's so having somebody accept that from you with pleasure and gratitude, it just validifies my whole years of standing in my knee replacements and whatever else I have.
That's an addicting feeling,
yeah,
I'm sure.
It is.
We could talk forever.
I know, I know. It's like, I'm wondering where we're at on time.
My goodness. Well, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah.
It's up to you. I don't know where you wanna.
No, I
where
think
you wanna take me.
Let's talk about cake mixes.
I don't know.
As a young girl, that's just, your reaction to food when you first came to the United States. And I was wowed to know that there is something that, is not gourmet that Lydia's had her hand in.
Well, Julian, you have read very well my memoirs.
I have read it page by page. Yes,
because
I
that's
love
one
it.
of the things that I really shared in that is that when I first came, I was amazed by foods, different foods, Jello, grapefruit, the Drake cakes. All of these things that were packaged that were so delicious, that were so easy to have at that time. Now I find now they're on my X list. But I have memories, and I can almost see how one can kind of get pulled in by it. They're so easy. You wrap the cellophane, and you got the yodels with the cream in the middle, and the whole thing. And even when I would cook as a youngster at home, waiting for my mother to come home so we could have dinner all together, I was always tempted by these cake mixes. You just opened the package, you added an egg and some butter, and put it in the oven, and you got this wonderful, fluffy vanilla cake, chocolate cake, whatever it was. And every night we had a cake for dinner, for dessert, because I thought, this was great achievement here. I was baking these great cakes. So I was fascinated by all of that. Then, it took me a while to make my retro movement, but I was fascinated by, and, I think that all of America, this is all this packaged food and prepared food, big industry, has gotten to our taste machinery here, and it's really, in a sense, setting the bar for what we eat. But I think what's beautiful in America that I see is people are really getting to understand that's not what they should be eating, that's not the proper nourishment, that's not the proper thing for our environment. So this consciousness to eating the way I ate with Grandma, even though that's difficult for everybody to have a Grandma next door, but I think the farmers are bringing their products to our stores, and the more we demand it as the public, the more it will happen.
Interesting what you said, whole food and full fat. Fat's no longer a dirty word.
Yeah.
You wrap it up?
I think we're pretty good, and it feels like an hour to me.
Yes, absolutely. Lydia, thank you so much, and here's to another 20 years in Kansas City.
Well, thank you very much. I look forward to it.
It's been a joy to be able to tromp around behind you and watch your journey here. It's been so fun. Thank you.
Well, you've been with me the whole journey.
I have. I'm very lucky that way.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time on Chew Diligence.